Good evening, everyone. My name is really Alexander Chernov. I'm going to be moderating the final session of the first day of the Moscow Urban Forum. That was a quite intensive day, and let's hope that other people will be joining us. But we have quite an interesting panel. We're going to talk about how to turn a city into a technological Mecca. Of course, we won't find all the answers, but at least we won't be able to show you some of the main approaches. We have a fairly interesting panel of experts, and I visited all of their cities. If our speakers say something wrong, I could always correct them because I know their cities. And that's true about Moscow, too. In the past, cities used to compete by their history, by their scale, and it's still in the rankings of tourists and special agencies. But competition number one between cities is in terms of technology. Which one is more attractive? The city that is more attractive in terms of technology is at the top. Now, climate in the city is not the most attractive part of the city. It's always about the technological, technocratic environment, how you can absorb everything that's new and use it in the urban environment. And let me invite to the stage our speakers, Klaus Wowereit, former Berlin mayor, Oleg Bocharov from the Department of Politics and Entrepreneur, and then we have First Deputy of Mayor of Tel Aviv, Asaf Zamir. Purnima Kapoor, representing Department of City Planning from the City of New York. Then we have the head of the Technopark Associations, Louis Sanz, and also Igor Nosov from Innopolis. He is our colleague from Tatarstan. We have a group of surprise experts from the first row, Katalin Gallas from Civic Tech Amsterdam, and at the same time she is the person who launched a number of city environment startups in London, Amsterdam, and where else? London, Amsterdam, and also Maxim Lukyanovich from VTB Bank, responsible for supporting small business, and Hugo Primus, honorary professor of systemic innovations and space development from Delft University of Technology. Let's dive straight into our discussion. Klaus.
Bislang sehr, sehr schön.
I've been to Berlin many times, and
everything was fine.
By the level of technology, Berlin is the place to visit, is the place to join. So what is the experience which you can share with us from your city in forming the innovation cluster and attracting the human capital, please?
Ja, Berlin hatte ja die Situation gehabt, dass es nach der Wiedervereinigung
we had some industrialization in Berlin. We lost hundreds of thousands of jobs due to difficulties in the east of the city. We had to compensate that. That was quite hard, but there were new investments in industrial area and also in China and India, but not automatically in Berlin and other Western European cities. We had no chance besides developing technologies. We had to develop the capital of our 4 universities, other higher education institutions, and hundreds of R&D centers which represent the core of technological development. They were the basis for the development in the area of high tech, and they could use some science-intensive technologies, and they had a great chance in Berlin. In the last couple of years, in addition to tourism and other things, the city also developed quite significantly, and in such areas as IT, and together with Tel Aviv, Berlin is one of the most lively cities in Europe that can be proud of its achievements. Of course, we are not the Silicon Valley, but we at least have more developments than in London. We have more solutions. Startups, when they come, they don't just come in and demand support. They bring their own ideas, and sometimes these are experienced entrepreneurs who want to invest. So anyway, in Berlin, we have one of the most developed structures creating thousands of jobs, which is very important for Berlin, and it's great to look at that. And the foundation of that is the presence of certain environment where creative people feel themselves at home. Companies have no problem attracting people from all over the world, from Manila, from New York, from Australia, from Moscow, or from other cities to come and work in Berlin because the city is attractive. You can move freely around the city, and the climate is okay too. People feel at home. We have scientists from the US, and if they are afraid of discrimination, if they could have gone elsewhere, but they stay in Berlin. It means they're open for international representatives. We are going to have this discussion, perhaps even without the moderator. And I have a question now to Mr. Zamir. Okay, in Tel Aviv, you have this innovative ecosystem of the city. Of course, we understand this was a deliberate, almost artificial program, and you have this system of interaction between development institutions and other organizations. How did you implement that? Many of you may have visited Tel Aviv. When in Skolkovo we launched our project, I would say we spent days and nights in Tel Aviv because the speed of decision-making in Tel Aviv is amazing. Please.
First of all, thank you for your kind words. This is not okay?
No, it's working.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Tel Aviv-Yafo has become the center of innovation, I think, of the Middle East in the last few years, and we this year passed the number of 2,000 startups in the center of the city in our ecosystem, turning it into the second largest ecosystem after San Francisco in the world. It happens for a few reasons, but you have to understand the beginning, the DNA of the city. This is the youngest Western metropolitan, or one of the youngest Western metropolitans in the world, because over 50% of its residents are under the age of 35. And that allows a very vibrant ambiance to the city and an ambiance of entrepreneurship. We understood this many years ago. I say we, this is before my time, and started creating hubs in the city, which were nonprofit city tech hubs to allow people that have smart ideas or innovative ideas to start working from certain places and appointed people in the municipality to be in charge of the connection between these startups to the municipality. The second part was creating a 55% city tax break for startups in the city to encourage this kind of industry to flourish in the city. Then we did something which I think was very important, as we opened the database of the city, and once a year held a competition in which we called all of these startups, it's called App to You, to create applications which better the lives of the residents in the city using the open codes of all of the database of the municipality. And opening this data allowed people to create applications that the municipality would never think in a million years by itself to create. And this is one of the important initiatives of the private sector and the public sector that cooperate in the city. We then went on to create an event, a year event called Open Startup, where all the startups open their doors to residents which can come and see it. And the most important thing, I think, more than all of those things, was to create an atmosphere which was not created by the municipality but by the residents of the city of Tel Aviv-Yafo, which is extremely open, extremely liberal, with investments and resources regarding things that people need in their day-to-day lives for this kind of ecosystem to exist. And these are things that people sometimes do not take into consideration. For example, flourishing nightlife, arts, culture, the licensing or permitting of businesses to operate in hours that are relevant for younger people, all help Tel Aviv to become this creative hub that it has become.
Okay. How applicable is the experience for you? The experience which Tel Aviv has developed, I mean, this ecosystem, which is integral part of the environment of the city. How applicable to the cities of other history, other culture, or other, I mean, tamaño in English, size?
I think one of the first speakers today said something very smart. He said that it's important to know which tools to take from cities to your city, but to learn how to make them relevant, because every city is different. This dynamic that exists in Tel Aviv is very, very rare. I think it exists in Berlin to an extent, but older cities do not have these kind of characteristics. So I think they should look at all of the things done and decide which of the things are most relevant. I'll give you an example of one thing. This is my most important example that's been done in Tel Aviv and I think is relevant for many cities. 2 years ago, we started a service called Digitel, where we digitalized all of our relationships between the municipality and its residents. So the relationship today is digitized and run through an app everyone has on its smartphone, which means that today, after everyone has opted into this system, I, as a municipality, connect with every resident in the city through their smartphone. So if there's a marathon and I want to let you know your specific road is being closed tomorrow between 2 and 4, you will receive a personalized message through this app. If there is a yoga class you said would interest you, you will receive a personal message. And if anything in that area of urban lifestyle is relevant to you, you will receive a personal message. But the most important thing that happened was that we decided to use this database and the ability to connect with people directly to change the world of public hearings and public participation and direct democracy. So every city that is represented here in the crowd and on the stage holds public hearings where at the beginning of a project, people are invited to City Hall to see the project and say their opinion. And in most cities in the world, probably 20 people come. Sometimes it's even the same 20 people. Sometimes they're against
professionals.
Professional participators in public hearings, and not always do they represent the whole opinion of the whole people. What we can do today with this system is say, you don't want to come to City Hall, you don't want to take the time out of your day, we understand this, you can be a participant with your phone on this chair in your house. We send you a survey of the project and you can say if you're for, if you're against, what you'd prefer doing. And the numbers jumped from 20 people to 6, 7, 8,000 people per neighborhood participating in the decision-making process. And I think it's something that can be very relevant for other cities in the world that want to have a better connection or a better direct connection with their residents.
Well, thank you. Bruniba, I have a question to you. 7 years ago, I had a chance to work with Michael Bloomberg and Dan Doktorov. We were bidding against each other for Olympic Games. Both cities lost to London, which is London hosted the great Olympic Games in 2012. But that was an idea by the management of the town, of the city, to develop the areas of New York by bringing Olympic Games. Like it happened in London with the Canary Wharf, for example. Now, New York is known as a city of huge, old industrial zones which are not hosting industry anymore. Is that heritage, is that an issue for the city, or it's an opportunity for technological breakthrough?
So I would say it's a little bit of both. And I think many people in the city felt that we actually didn't lose anything by losing the Olympics, and we gained a whole lot of new thinking about particularly our waterfront areas, which, as you said, had been, these were the areas that in the 1950s and 60s were really vibrant industrial uses. They provided a lot of jobs for the city. But over the years, as the technology changed, industry changed, these areas became basically disinvested, vacant, often sitting there doing nothing. And I think over the years, and I think more particularly in the last decade, what has happened is that these have become areas of opportunities, starting actually in Brooklyn. And this is where I will respectfully disagree a little bit with our Tel Aviv colleagues,
yes.
Because Brooklyn is one of the oldest boroughs within New York City. And I think what has happened there is this very organic growth of industry, where really, when in the 1990s, we were chasing companies to come to us, now companies are coming where talent is, exactly as is happening in Tel Aviv, except that in New York City, these areas that were lying vacant became more attractive to the younger people. They are less expensive. They are not like the traditional business districts. And what started as a movement with artists, sort of often illegally occupying these spaces, particularly in the last decade, just prior to the recession in particular, became hubs of new innovation, new technology. And what we've found is that this has really taken a stronghold in the city. And within the US, we are, now after the Silicon Valley, New York City is one of the bigger innovation hubs. There is the more sort of organized effort, as with the Cornell Technion in Roosevelt Island, but the Brooklyn phenomenon really started it all in a much more organic way, with the companies really coming to where the talent is, and where the younger people found big, attractive loft buildings where the elevators are big enough for them to take their bikes and their dogs up to the offices. A very attractive infrastructure where to do this kind of work. And yes, I think the culture is very important to this community. Having cafes, having nightlife, having places where they can meet. There is also this synergy that comes where this is not just you see one person sitting alone on a tech startup. I mean, today there are over 1,300 companies in these areas. There are over 18,000 jobs in this very small area, and it's projected to grow that by 2025, they're projecting, it could be a huge industry within it. And this is one subset of the larger group. So, we've kind of channeled this more organic growth into what has now become sort of a Brooklyn phenomenon. And it's going up the East River towards Queens. The Roosevelt Island, where Cornell Technion is coming, is a short boat ride across. So the entire East River corridor, which used to be at one time traditional industry, is now turning into this innovation hub.
And they're planning to bid for Olympic Games next time, no? Let's see how it goes in Rio de
Yes.
Janeiro, yes. Олег Бочаров, человек, который...
Oleg Bocharov, the man who is responsible for the technological breakthrough. We don't know whether we succeed or not. We hope so. So the breakthrough in Moscow. In the recent 2 years, the number of technoparks not just doubled, it's not tripled, it's just increased significantly. Why do we need it? Do we have too much land? All these technoparks are the growth points of growth and technical development of our capital. And this is a very speedy process. Well, today's our mayor said at the opening session that due to the scaling, upscaling, we can any small project turn into the big one. And if our city claims to be a Mecca, should think globally, especially megalopolis where we have 25 million people. This is the first thing. The second aspect, it's not possible to have the development without Skolkovo due to your unique expertise that was brought here by this institution and which ensured the breakthrough, and I hope this will ensure the next breakthroughs. As for the reforms in the industrial areas, resulted in receipt of permit from our government to build new technical centers on the territory of 28 million square meters. So all this started about 15 years ago. So we remember that we were looking for the city. Do you remember where to move to? And the city should become the administrative one. But we decided to stay here. You know that we have about 300 universities with million students, and half of them have technological specialties. We are the technological center of Moscow, of the country, of the post-Soviet space. And this leap forward that we had was possible due to the new possibilities, due to the new opportunities that the businesses received. We should think about Mecca, and when we speak about innovations, we make ourselves think conventionally, but not in an innovative way. The most important thing is, for becoming the technological Mecca, there are three ways. The first way is when you have the huge market and you just create conditions, you invite technologies, companies, and people. But it seems to me this age has already passed. By the way, I've been to New York recently after the Washington. We visited the World Bank. I saw the new quarter with new companies that create this miracle. And by the way, this is so evident. It seems to me that the number of startups is not that huge. We don't have these lines of young people who are trying to be useful in this or that area. So the attraction of technologies to the market should be rethought, reconsidered. So we have Tel Aviv, we have some other cities that have huge scientific potential. We just need to choose the vector that will help us to retain our companies, and then through the technologies we can then sell these companies and start developing our technologies in other countries. We've seen many examples of integration in Denmark, in the Netherlands, and so on. But again, this all has already passed. Do you remember the Arab miracle? There are just events which are created, and these events attract Startups, markets, demand, this is something new, and the companies are looking for new technologies. It seems to me that we have already exhausted this issue in terms of its potential. What else do we need for our country or for any city, to become the technological Mecca? This is the main question which is posed to Moscow. Oxford's economics assesses the potential of Moscow as 420 billion euro. We have a huge market, sales market, but regardless of the influx of people, the consumer expenses are 180 billion rubles. But still, we don't have here technologies. We should look for new communications to be able to attract new technologies. We need to have open dialogue and open competition. As for the production cost of the scientific product in Moscow, at the level of innovations, and by the way, here we have 330,000 people working in innovations, and the production cost and their labor costs dropped down by 30%, and the business also had significant losses. So they have losses of about 50% of their profit. It seems to me that Moscow applied everything that it could apply, and now some empty pedestrian streets became the centers of life. Millions of people come here and see our cultural values, but still it didn't result in the breakthrough of some technologies. So we cannot say that this turned our city into Mecca. 100,000 square meters of Skolkovo Technopark. Well, you see, I understand that you don't have enough room there. We're going maybe to exploit because it's not enough space for us. Well, there is Mr. Sans next to me, and I believe that we all should think about the high-tech jobs, about technologies. We want people to have access to the global market, and the system of the intellectual labor should be distributed in such a way that is easily distributed to the market of sales. It seems to me there won't be any transfer of technologies. It's dying out, but there will be new partnerships. There will be something new. I understand, and I support you in referring to Luis Sanz, and he is the head of the Technopark Association. By the way, there are cities who were persuaded in the importance of technoparks. Well, I mean that we don't need to persuade these people in the importance of technoparks, but still we have some cities where people don't believe in technoparks, or their experience is not very positive, especially when such technoparks were imposed from the top by the authorities. And then nothing goes on in such cases. Oleg has just told about this. The technopark doesn't mean any thrive or any development, but technoparks in Moscow are full up to 90%, but I'm speaking about other cities. So, Luis, how do technoparks influence the development of big and small cities, of different cities?
All right. Dobry wieczór. En also goedenavond, natuurlijk, zou ik zeggen. By the way, talking about languages, allow me just an anecdotal thought that came to my mind when I was listening to Mayor Bovary, because I know for a fact that he speaks fluent English. I've heard him before. So I was wondering, when he chose German, is it to punish the Brits for their recent Brexit decision? Who knows? But having said that, what I can tell you is that in the 80s, for example, science and technology parks were mostly non-urban projects. They were nearby the cities, but somehow outside, for a variety of reasons, I would say. And this has now changed, and all throughout the world, they are, by large, urban phenomenon. By entering into the city, what we have discovered is that this type of projects have a great capacity of evolution and adaptation. And in fact, the most interesting aspect is probably to see how cities are using the basic concept of the science park model to implement a number of changes and a number of things in the city itself. For example, if you think of a project like the one in Recife in Brazil, Porto Digital, you see that they are using many of the ingredients of science parks to revitalize and to recover entire areas of the cities that were all industrial districts that have been quite degraded because of a number of issues. In other places, like in Bangkok, they are creating entirely new cities from scratch with this concept and hybridizing the concept of parks in terms of being engines for the attraction and development of new type of businesses, mostly innovation-based businesses, together with residential areas. If you go to Berlin, like Berlin Adlershof or Barcelona, you see that this type of concept is also being used to maybe inject new dynamism in certain areas of the city. So they are proving to be, in general, good tools for one purpose. The purpose is that when you go around the world and you realize that there is a big change in the way many cities see themselves. So the idea of the city being a passive container or a passive recipient for things to happen, if they ever happened, are over. Those days are over. Cities have decided to be proactively engaged in designing, reshaping themselves with one clear objective: to be important kernels in the development of the knowledge economy. And if we talk about knowledge economy, that means people utilizing knowledge and technology to do things with it, then obviously we are talking the language of science and technology parks. So what I see is that they are more than ever before becoming one of the elements that cities can use exactly to that end. I would agree with the theme of this session, transforming cities into technological meccas, as long as this is not a goal in itself. I personally couldn't care less whether the city I live in is a technological mecca or not. What I care is that it provides the right quality in terms of services, in terms of attention to the people, etc., etc. And today, all those things are unthinkable unless, of course, you use massive doses of technology.
Я согласен, кстати, с посылом про.
By the way, I absolutely agree with you with what you said about Mecca, because if all the cities turn into Mecca, then there will be too many Meccas. There should be only one Mecca, otherwise Mecca will not be Mecca anymore. So, in addition to Luis, we have lots of other people I've mentioned already. First Deputy Mayor of Tel Aviv, ex-Mayor of Berlin. We have also officials from Moscow, Oleg Bocharov, Purnima Kapoor, Louis Santens. But I would like also to give the floor to the practitioners, those who implement the projects with their own hands. And their salary depends on the success or the lack of success of these projects. So I would like to pose this question to Igor Nosov from Innopolis. Well, you're very close in terms of spirit to us, but you are too far from Kazan. Kazan is not Moscow. I'm not saying this is good or bad. I do like Kazan, but it's too far to go to Innopolis. So what are the most attractive things that you have? What are your strengths and weaknesses and risks? Thank you so much. And by the way, we're not too far from Kazan, 35 kilometers away. 4 years ago, just a very beautiful place where Sviaga and Volga River come together. A few persons came and they established the first capsule on the place where there will be the city of innovations. This is Innopolis. And by the way, this became the first city from scratch in Russia. And this city now has the Innopolis status. As for the prehistory, why we're not in Kazan but far from Kazan, this is advantage rather than disadvantage. In Tatarstan, this Innopolis appeared, and I really like what was said at the previous session. Many Russian regions cannot implement successfully their projects because they first plunge into the industry they have no competences in, and then abandon all the rest competences and industries. 15 or 20 years ago, Tatarstan thought about diversification. You understand that Tatarstan is oil and petrochemistry mostly, and recently we have celebrated the 10th anniversary of Alabuga. This is a big industrial project. After that, there was IT Park project. This is an urban project. And 3 years ago, we started the construction of Innopolis city, which is 35 kilometers away from Kazan. There is a big advantage in that. You see, we are connected with Kazan. Kazan is a beautiful big city. If you live in Innopolis and you would like to go to the opera, it's not far away. But on the other hand, we're on the other side of the Volga River, and our task is to have an independent city with its traditions. Students, people, innovators who work and live in Innopolis are involved in very interesting business. And not everyone is so lucky. Now they create traditions and values of the new city. We are 35 kilometers away from Kazakhstan, but it's very close to Kazan, and we can enjoy all the benefits of Kazan. And still, Innopolis cannot be turned into Khimki. I'm not against Khimki, but it's very difficult to understand where is the borderline between Khimki and Moscow. We would like to have our own ecosystem that creates excellent conditions, living conditions for innovators, for their families. We want to have this critical mass that will generate new businesses, new products, and people can develop and earn money. What is our difference and how we differ from all the rest in innovative areas of Russia? So the first kindergarten, the first residential houses and other infrastructure facilities were opened before our technopark was set up. Before, they were like in closed circle. They tried to persuade the big boss from Moscow that we need social infrastructure, and the big bosses from Moscow said, first, invite investors. After that, developers will come. But investors said, we have no place to live in. And this was like a close, vicious circle. But now we have townhouses, we have blocks of apartments, we have 2 kindergartens, so we have lyceum for talented children. We have the best children from Russia who are invited to this school. Education is not possible without universities, and we have an excellent university in Innopolis that was established in no time. I understand that the university cannot, the full-fledged university cannot be set up just within a number of years, but still, together with Carnegie University, Mello University, we laid the foundation, and our university has a bright future. We believe that this will be the main magnet in the development of Innopolis. Speaking about the critical mass, we are just 1 year old after we have launched Innopolis. Now we have lyceum, schools, university. Now we're creating traditions, and the most important, we create the critical mass. We understand that our first residents, before the critical mass is accumulated, are suffering. We are the management company. The Republic of Tatarstan, Russian Federation, supports us. Our task is to pass this period, to come through this period as soon as possible. For us, our citizens are the most important people. The cost of rent is symbolic. Kindergartens are also quite cheap. We have the best medical centers. Everything is working. And when we have this critical mass accumulated together with traditions, then we won't need any governmental or state support, because we will just not need it if we have the critical mass in place, which is composed of taxpayers, residents. Our city can be self-sufficient, and I hope that it will happen quite soon.
Изящно ты пнул.
Thank you, Igor. And When you're talking about big bosses, did you mean the ones from Russia or the ones from Moscow? Well, I was talking about 10 years ago when I used to work in, I'm not an IT expert by education, I'm learning there. I used to work in Alaboga, which was the first special economic zone in Russia, and we spent years trying to convince big bosses in Moscow that it was 10 years ago. Anyway, we were trying to convince them, and now the situation has changed, and they finally heard us, and we can use all these opportunities that these people who heard us gave us. Now let's turn to our experts. Catalin.
Innovate cities with high potential civic tech startups. Because talking about technoparks is one thing. What is the role of small companies, relatively small, physically small? Can they influence the environment? Can they change the landscape of the city?
Thank you, Alexander, for the question. First of all, thank you for the invitation. I really appreciate to be here. And I had the fortune to be on both sides, City Hall, and also now I have my startup incubator where I actually work on a global civic tech hub concept, where I incubate startups that are changing urban infrastructure. For example, they do projects with sustainability or with IoT or blockchain. And what actually my proposition is in this theme, that cities are very illiterate with technology, and I worked in the city hall, and I know it's so painful to see the bad procurement. And when I moved out, I decided that actually I want to revitalize cities, and that you can do with startups. And now I have 12 startups where I work with. These are very young, very capable people between 25 to 33 years old. And I think that what they're doing is very amazing, and I try to create a global platform where these people can meet, and we can actually share their solutions, we can replicate. So if, for example, Barcelona makes a crowdsourcing platform, I already saw that Fukuoka, Japan is reusing. So I believe that we can be technological Mecca only if we try to be in the epicentrum of our strengths. City halls will not be technological Meccas. They're very good in framework setting. They're very good in give capital for some innovation. But I think it's very important to create an intelligence layers of startups that are actually city halls can tap into in this intelligence layer. And if there is a problem like how do I manage my crowd flow in Moscow because you have the construction, then you can go and consult these startups that are moving 10 times faster. They take risks, so they actually much more innovative. And if we already acknowledge this vulnerability that we can't do everything, then I think you are one step further and you can go and be a technological Mecca. And this is where I'm working in now, incubating these startups and bringing them to more new cities. And it's very exciting because you can see that actually you can ask what is actually hot, what is actually exciting in city innovation. And there are two things that I explored. One of them is platforms, peer-to-peer platforms, and the second one is actually blockchain. Blockchain is going to be the new paradigm where many city halls will work, many banks, and I would be very happy to see a conversation where city halls are inviting these young people, and please don't hire them. I advise don't hire because then you will ruin them. They have to stay independent, and if there is a supportive layer where they can work and interact with each other, then they can revolutionize cities, and then there will be a technological Mecca, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. Question to Hugo Primus, representing the city, the town, the village of Delft, because what really is zero threat for Delft is to become the innovation Mecca. And I'm very lucky that you are not targeting this this way. Стать Меккой для Дельфа — это с моей...
For Delft to become a Mecca, that would be dishonest to that small little town. You are a specialist in spatial solutions. How can we combine innovations and space? Can we combine them, or are they the two parallel things that never cross?
Delft is a small city, that's right, but it's a part of the Randstad, which is a huge area with connected cities. And planners talk about borrowed size. The impact of all these cities together may be the same as, for instance, London or Paris. In general, you can say that cities in advanced economies are network cities, combining green and blue networks, transport networks, of course, ICT networks, energy networks, including smart grids, which match demand and supply of renewable resources, and so on. And those networks connect the global scale and the local scale. And the important impact of those networks is that it increases the positive externalities of agglomeration. These may be input externalities, for instance, producer who save on transport cost. It may be labor market externalities. You can find more jobs on a short distance. And that's the crucial thing for this meeting, there are knowledge externalities. Proximity facilitates the exchange of information and knowledge, including tacit knowledge, by face-to-face context, and there you have the restaurants and the cafes and so on. It fosters a climate of entrepreneurship and innovation and creativity. So I think that, for instance, the relation between universities and cities are very important to increase those knowledge externalities.
Thank you. Maxim,
Maxim Lukyanovich from VTB. Sberbank is building a huge technopark in Skolkovo. What is VTB waiting for? We have a great territory, no taxes. Come and visit us. Mr. Sobyanin just opened this overpass, and we are going to have light rail there and the boat station. Well, banks are interested in technoparks, but we go in a different direction, different from Sberbank. You and Mr. Graf have different values than we value the development of technoparks and innovation centers, but we do not participate in the construction of technoparks yet. Perhaps it's just all these cities just now told you that the way to develop is through technoparks. Right, but technopark residents require financial support. They require encashment services and cash management services. And this is what we are planning to do even now. And this is the interest of banks to this topic. But to begin with, let me explain to you why I represent VTB as head of their department of SMEs and not from some big corporate business department. In Russia, 97% of legal entities are small businesses, but their total share in GDP is relatively small, 21%. If you compare it with European countries, where you have this number above 50% and 75% in Italy, and there's a huge room for growth, small business can give the city what its citizens need, meaning comfort, trade, barber's shop around the corner, a bakery nearby, and during the previous session, we discussed that even in technoparks, more than 50% of companies represent small business. Whatever you want to hear from banks, all this financial support, whether we are going to issue loans Of course, these are hard times to finance small business. Last year, the market of loans to small business was cut by 1/3 because overdue debts increased by almost 2 times. But now we have signs of improvement. The interest rate is down to 14 or 15%. That's quite a lot, but that's not 28% that we had a year ago. And of course, banks cannot just issue loans to anyone. But since we had the devaluation of ruble and domestic manufacturers got some advantages, for example, in food production, counter-sanctions also helped this process. We see quite a few attractive companies, and we are expanding our loans program. And now there are quite a few institutes in Moscow that support the city. We have this Small Business Support Foundation. We are their largest partner, and their portfolio has 20% of those guarantees to small business. And there's another project that we are working on with the Department of Science, Industrial Policy and Entrepreneurship, which Mr. Bocharov represents from Moscow, and this is a center for services to business, and we plan to locate them both in technoparks and in some other urban locations where all these small companies can get registered quickly and get financial services and consultations from leading banks, and that would bring those clients closer to us. If we talk about major developing projects financing construction, here our colleagues from large corporate divisions know better. We are going to support everyday residents of technoparks. We are slightly behind schedule, but I have one brief question to all of you, and I want a very brief answer, honest answer if possible, too. Are there any conditions under which a small innovation company, say from Berlin, Tel Aviv, 400 technoparks that Luis represents, New York, could move to Moscow to develop their business? And what are those conditions? Or is that totally impossible due to some climatic, political, economic, organizational, logistical reasons? Okay, Berlin first.
Ich glaube, es ist möglich, dass wir Technik.
I think it's quite possible that we would start some technoparks in Moscow. We support those economic areas where they almost create artificial worlds through an incubator. China does it a lot, but whether it's going to create this creative mood, I have my doubts. In some locations like Tel Aviv, Berlin, San Francisco, you have this special atmosphere. They don't even get any financial support, but you have to have this attractiveness. If it's not there, then it won't work. Then you have this clinical situation. I'm not saying it's wrong, but it's only part of the entire process. In biotech, where you don't need a lab, you need some quiet atmosphere. In the IT sector, you need some calm atmosphere too.
No.
I think no. I think for sure that it's possible. I don't want to speak specifically about technopark. I am from the small group of people that think that tech parks are not always a good thing for a city in the urban planning aspect of the word. But so I want to put that to the side. I think, as Klaus said, that there are certain companies or certain sectors that for sure could do amazing work in Moscow, The one thing that I don't know enough about is that you have to have an ambiance where local government wants this to happen and is open for this to happen and is open to have communication between this sector and between the local government, because even if it's not things that are relevant to the city or to the municipality itself specifically, you need coordination, you need cooperation, you need information, you need the ability to be hosted to start. And I think there are many companies that could flourish here, but they need a governmental partner just to open the door to understanding that business here is wanted.
Thank you. And to Delft?
You're
Any
asking,
company from Tel Aviv moving to Delft? No?
to Delft, it's easier. It's easier to Delft than to Moscow because, because Tel Aviv is much, its size is more similar to Delft than to Moscow.
And you know the beauties of Dutchland. Yeah. Luis? Any innovation company from Paraguay or Zimbabwe?
Okay, from my perspective, I think that what we are trying to do is to make sure that our industry, worldwide considered, knows about what's happening in Moscow. And in fact, you're part of it. It's a good moment to say that next September, we will be holding our World Conference of Science and Technology Parks and Areas of Innovation right here in Moscow. But what I think it's important to realize is that another significant change that has occurred under the umbrella of the knowledge economy is how the mobility of companies and people operate. In the classic industrial era, what you had is companies would decide where to locate based on factors such as proximity to a good supply of raw materials or proximity to a good transportation nodes. People were the least on that part of the equation. So once companies decided where to locate, the workforce had no choice but to follow. This has changed significantly, and now with the knowledge economy, it's the young knowledge workers, creative people that are choosing where to live, and then companies that have these people as their main asset have no option but to follow these people. So the issue is now, the important fact, and that goes for technoparks but also for cities, is not actually to be attractive for companies, but to be attractive for people. If you are attractive for people, you will succeed in attracting the type of companies that we are all looking for. And again, I have to say that parks can be an interesting element next to many others for cities to become attractive, because the competition nowadays among cities to really be on the top league is huge. And again, the top league has room for only a few cities. So not all cities will make it. And another problem is, what do we do with the cities that won't reach the top? And there is network that counts, and finding the right niche that counts. So there is room for many cities, but let's face it, not all of them will be on the top league.
Thank you. And New York? Moving from New York to Moscow? Sounds encouraging.
I think what you heard really is that it has become more of, it's less of a park, sort of a sterile enclosure within which, industry will thrive. It is more really where you make industry part of the fabric of the city. It's the mix of uses that seems to attract this kind of innovation and this kind of industry. It is the public and the private partnership. And, from the public sector, we see our role as sort of ensuring that the infrastructure is there for the private sector to then step in and be innovative. It's the best thing the cities can often do is really get out of the way of innovation and really sort of let the innovators innovate and be the support around it. And, for us, that has often meant sort of changing the way we think about traffic, changing the way we think about modes of transportation, providing bike lanes, providing ferry options, providing the infrastructure that is not, none of the innovation economy users that I know want to be in a Class A office building in a midtown somewhere. They really want to be in an area that has the energy, that has, the young people. So for Moscow, that is very possible. You have to just sort of set the framework and then get out of the way and let innovation happen.
Thank you. Олег, а ты не хочешь заключить пари?
Oleg, would you like to make a bet with Berlin, Tel Aviv, Spain, and New York? Then a year from now, the number of foreign startups that are going to land here and going to be attracted by the Moscow ecosystem landscape will be enough for us to say, see how it works, or it's not possible. I want to make that kind of bet because no matter who wins it or who loses it, the company will benefit. People will be better. Let me quote Lewis once again. He said that in the center of the digital economy is intellect. The only carrier of that intellect are people. And very soon, the digital component in the product will prevail compared to the production of that product. Even now, digital world is independent industry everywhere. Another important aspect that we don't talk about when we think about the future, 10 most demanded jobs in Moscow today did not even exist 5 years ago. That's why I think that it's very important to understand what kind of comfort you need to create at any individual territory or city so that every child born in this city carrying their own genome or emotions could develop fully in the kind of ecosystem that he was born in, feeling at the same time part of the entire ecosystem of Earth. I think that Skolkovo will be an excellent opportunity of this unique union of experts that will allow us to think together about that. So the main bet is as follows. Which city will be better at creating conditions to invest into the human capital? But let's not call it Mecca. You can call it whatever. The provoking topic is that we have things to discuss. Tel Aviv is proud of the number of startups per hectare. Berlin can be proud of the number of international startups that combined different teams, and they are proud of their national football team. New York can be proud of the unique Brooklyn. New York can be proud of everything all the time. But anyway, this is the old philosophical joke. We are moving into this era of intellectual exchange. If you, Alexander, have an apple, and I have an apple, and we could exchange those apples, how many apples we will have? If you have an apple and a half, and I only have a half of it, then it's a business to your advantage. But if I have an idea, an element of intellectual labor, and you have an idea, then we exchange those ideas, then both of us will have two ideas. It's important to create situations for the exchange of specific intellectual projects, then both Berlin and Tel Aviv will multiply, and Tel Aviv and Moscow and Delft and others. Well, we used up all our time. I'd like to thank all the participants in being so patient when answering my questions, and I'd like to thank the spectators. We are going to have a new day here at 10 o'clock. We're going to have the first discussion in the morning about the mega projects. Moscow cannot live without mega projects, and we will discuss it. Thank you, and see you tomorrow.